Today, we celebrate art and artists. We celebrate all who create art that speaks truth to power, inspires and elevates, reminds us of the beauty in the world, helps us understand ourselves and others, expresses the truth in our heart, and is. I'm delighted that we have so many artists and those who love art in this community. Reverend Lucas and I have been talking about how we can celebrate art in our community, and I'm very excited to announce that in the near future, we hope to have a permanent art gallery on the brick wall in Fellowship Hall. So let this day be the start, perhaps, of a regular celebration of art. Today, we have the opportunity to hear from three of the artists in our congregation: Sally Lowry, Alex Donnelly, and Andrea Mills. And at this time, I'd like to invite forward Sally to tell us a little bit about her relationship to art and the meaning of her work.
Hi. I am an artist. There, I said it. I didn't used to say that I was an artist. I would say things like, I like to draw, I paint with oils, I like to use my hands, but I felt uncomfortable using the word artist. I think somewhere along the line, I got the impression that the word was reserved for those with great skill, who would create masterpieces that were hung in museums. And then, when I retired from working, I decided I would follow in my son's footsteps and take some art lessons. And I learned to paint with oils, very, very forgiving medium. But I realized that I am an artist. And today I truly believe that we all are artists. And each day we all create something. Actually, it was earlier when I was a special education teacher of children with physical and cognitive impairments that I encouraged my students to create their own pieces of art. And then I learned to appreciate the artist in each of us. It didn't matter that their masterpieces often looked like an unintentional Jackson Pollock painting or a Picasso drawing, but in my eyes and in theirs, their creations were magnificent. And what I learned from my students was that the process of creating brings great joy. I have two quotes that I keep with my art supplies. One is by Thomas Merton, who wrote, "Art enables us to find ourselves and lose ourselves at the same time." And that has been my experience. To me, it's the process, it's not the end product. Although I am pleased if I am able to create something that I'm not too embarrassed to show in Fellowship Hall. But when I'm working on a painting, I get lost in the flow. It's like meditation. And for that period of time, my focus is on the composition, the brush stroke, the color, and layer by layer, the blank canvas transforms into a landscape, or a portrait, or a still life. I never know where a painting's going to take me. I think the painting knows what it wants to be, and I just help it get there. The blank canvas, as we saw, has been used for all sorts of metaphors: new beginnings, a fresh start, an opportunity to show the world who you are. And it also represents unlimited possibilities. When facing the blank canvas, I can either be paralyzed by not knowing what to do, or I can just make that first brush stroke, that dot. And this is when, as in life, it takes courage to begin without knowing the outcome. You see, I think artists are courageous. It takes art to face that blank canvas and to put oneself out there. Some have compared it to waking up in the morning and facing a new day. Each step, each decision is another brushstroke on the canvas of our lives. And talking about this today gave me an opportunity to reflect on how my life has been different because of my art. I notice the blues in the sky or in the lake. I notice the greens in the trees and the grass in our prairie, the way a shadow falls from a tree, where are the darks and the lights, and how perspective can deceive our eyes. I've learned to take advantage of happy mistakes, and I've been stretched beyond my comfort zone. I've also learned when to stop and step away from the painting. There's always more that can be done, but knowing when to stop is just as important as that first brushstroke. I'd like to end today by reading the second quote that's in my art supplies, and it's from a friend of ours, Kurt Vonnegut. It's "Go into the arts." I'm not kidding. The arts are not a way to make a living. They are a very human way of making life more bearable. Practicing an art, no matter how well or badly, is a way to make your soul grow. Sing in the shower, dance to the radio, tell stories. Write a poem to a friend, even a lousy poem. Do it as well as you possibly can. You will get an enormous reward. You will have created something. So for heaven's sake, just do it. Thank you.
Consider this an artistic intermission.
Hello? Hello?
Hi, everyone. My name's Alex Donnelly. I'm also an artist. Struggled with being an artist my whole life, like Sally. And what I'm going to talk about is not like a full formal artist statement. It's also kind of a little bit about me and a tiny bit about the artwork I have made and the artwork I'm hopefully going to make professionally. But since I'm new to the congregation, I wanted to give this a little bit more of a bio rather than just an art talk. And for those of you who don't know me or don't know my family, it's probably, you probably do because there's quite a trail behind us. But my wife's Rose, and I have two daughters, Alma and Edie, and we're always running around making a lot of noise. So you might actually know somebody I went to grad school with, Anders, who I think came and did an artist talk about a week before we came first to the congregation, which was interesting. But yeah, I went to that same grad school, University of Wisconsin-Madison, and got a MFA, Masters of Fine Art in painting and drawing. And while I was there, and the reason I went there is there's a phenomenal school of environmental science there called the Nelson Institute. And I really wanted to practice art within a research institute so that I could access scholars, people who were studying environmental science in human and animal relationships, environmental ethics, and philosophy. So a lot of the work that I did there was involved in those topics, exploring those topics. I read a lot of the works and was exposed to a huge amount of work, but some of the important seminal works that I think people should look at are Rights of Nature by Rod Nash, Animal Rights by Peter Singer. It's a really important book that people should look at. But I also was looking at artists who were dealing with topics of the environment, climate change, and also human and animal relationships. And I wrote my thesis and my thesis show looking at a writer, philosopher named Timothy Morton. He's at Rice University. And he wrote a really interesting book that I wrote my a thesis paper on and actually made a show on. And it was called Hyperobjects. And the idea is sort of interesting. It's about the way that there are profound, complex ideas that correlate to objects we experience in our everyday life, such as, for example, styrofoam, or a large number of things that we interact with on a daily basis, and they have relationships to large, complex ideas like climate change. And the book was about how we struggle to understand, even in a basic ideological sense, what climate change is, let alone understand how to produce policy to deal with it, et cetera. But there were a lot of artists dealing with physical or manifestations of these ideas in artwork. One of them is Tara Donovan. She's done a lot of really interesting work with styrofoam. I think she's worth looking at. So I finished my master's in 2019. I did my MFA on those environmental science topics. Now I'm transitioning to medical illustration. I just got accepted to the University of Illinois at Chicago's biomedical visualization program. And that's basically, it's medical illustration. I think a lot of people don't know what it is exactly, but they're calling it biomedical visualization now because it is so technologically driven now and uses a lot of modeling programs and a lot of technology. I'm going to be attending that program in June. Working full-time with 2 kids and doing that program's pretty scary sounding, but we'll see how it goes. I think the field is interesting, and it's not super well known, but there's only about 5,000 active practitioners who are certified in medical illustration. It's a certification given by a group called CMI, Certified Medical Illustrator, and you have to defend it with a portfolio defense every 5 years in addition to a didactic. So it's pretty extensive. And the field is interesting because the products of the field are widely consumed, and sometimes I think we don't know that. But for example, the CDC released right around 2020 a visual representation of SARS-CoV-2, aka coronavirus, and everybody saw this. It was seen millions of times, and that was done by an artist from the program I'm about to attend, also with an in-house artist from the Centers for Disease Control. But I think it's a really interesting example of how prevalent and important these types of communications are, and how a lot of times the people behind them are sort of lost, which is fine. But there was so much study behind the production of that image, and it was so fateful, and it's just a really important way that people were able to understand what this thing looked like that was so abstract and ambiguous to us. So that's the end of my talk. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Good morning. My name is Andrea Mills. I always remember wanting to create useful things with my hands. To me, that seemed like an important thing to do with your time, to create beautiful things that you can also touch and use in your daily life. My medium of choice has always been about creating useful objects, but it's changed through the years as I have moved through different life stages. As a child, I did a lot of sewing. When I went to college, there was no room in a dorm to set up a sewing machine, so I started knitting. Then I moved to Florida, and knitting seemed kind of silly in that climate. So I started making jewelry. Then I found myself in a cold climate, and the portable art form of knitting was a perfect distraction while waiting for my kids to finish soccer practice and music lessons. As a bonus, it allowed me to make space for something in my day that was just for me. The act of knitting is a balm for my need to be constantly busy. When I'm knitting, I can sit still and listen to myself or the world around me. I wonder if knitting was the first fidget spinner. Maybe this is one of the reasons that knitting has been practiced continuously since the 5th century AD, beginning in Egypt and then spreading across the world. I appreciate that knitting connects me with the past, and it connects me to my ancestors, going back generations, creating necessities for the family. Knitting is also a comfort to me. Studies have proven that it's as good as meditation for your brain and your mood. The act of moving my hands calms my mind and allows it to wander and think. Or if I'm working on a challenging piece, it can distract my mind from the cares of the day. However, knitting is also really annoying. It takes forever to make anything, and there's a good chance that the finished product won't fit or hang right. Projects require constant monitoring and reworking, sometimes even after they are completed. I think, though, that this is part of the appeal for me. The tenacity and patience required give me a chance to play to my strengths in a world where the fast and furious is often what gets noticed and rewarded. I have learned many important life skills from knitting, including patience, diligence, a little engineering and physics, and the understanding that anything can be built if you do it one stitch at a time. I'll share a story with you now of one of the important lessons that I learned from knitting. My knitting life began, as many others have. I learned it from my mother. The lessons didn't really take, though, until I moved from hot and arid Texas, which is not a great place for sweaters, to the Chicago area to go to college. My freshman year, I decided I needed a nice warm sweater, and I would knit one. I worked on the sweater for months and eventually finished it. I brought it with me today to share with you. Now, in my defense, bright colors were big in the 80s, okay? So, if you know how to knit, you know that this is a difficult sweater to make. There are 5 colors, including 2 and often 3 colors on every row. The pattern covers the entire sweater, and a sweater is a complex project for a beginner. But, and here's the trick, I didn't know that. I just liked it, so I made it. I didn't know it was difficult, so I wasn't intimidated. There was no fear to hold me back. It never occurred to me that I couldn't do it. So I moved forward, one stitch at a time, until it was done. I eventually, of course, learned what a difficult task I had completed as a beginner, and I've kept the sweater ever since to remind me that everything is built one little piece at a time. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "You must do the things you cannot do." And my version of that is, if you know you can't do it, if you don't know you can't do it, it's a lot easier to do it. Thank you.
And if we could have just one more round of applause for our artists who for having the courage to come up.